Hey everybody, Ronny, Criss here. So excited to kick off my new videocast experience, Waxing on Wax, with my friend Randell Foster from Symphonic Distributions here in the Nashville office. How you doing, my friend?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. So let's talk about Ray Charles. So glad to have you, man. You know, Randell and I work together through Symphonic Distribution. They represent my music, and it's always exciting to work with them. They do such a great job. And the other cool thing is we are both vinyl enthusiasts. And today we are going to kick off this new video cast talking about Modern Sounds and Country and Western Music by Ray Charles. Look at that. Yeah. Man, this is such a great record. We're going to do a little, we have some segments here we're going to do. The first one is Bird's Eye View. It's good to know what this record is all about, what it is. It was released in April 1962. It was actually released on ABC Paramount. It was recorded in February 1962 at Capitol Studios in New York City, also at the United Recording Studios, and it was mastered by Bell Sound Studios. It's a phenomenal record. And there's incredible people performing on it. The strings were arranged by Marty Page. I think that's how you say it. Do you know how to say it? Does that sound right?
That sounds about right.
He, super well known at the time, string arranger, and did an incredible job. When you listen to this record, I mean, the strings are so prominent and just really makes it just epic, really. From my perspective, at least. And we have some great, this is Ray Charles' presentation of his love for country and Western music. He absolutely loved it. He grew up around it. Obviously, the world knew him as a rhythm and blues and soul artist at the time. And his love for country music, he wanted to put that into the world. He wanted to show that he could do that and that it was important to him. And so some of the songs that are on there, you have songs written by Hank Williams, You Win Again, and have Hey Good Looking, but Eddie Arnold, Curly Williams, and Charles himself wrote a song on there. Ray Charles wrote Careless Love. So a lot of really amazing songs on this record. Any other things that you remember about the record?
I didn't know this record existed until I knew it existed. And for me, it was such an interesting divergent path for Charles to leave the R&B rhythm and blues kind of stride piano space he'd been just murdering it in, and to go and seemingly jump into reimagining a genre of music that didn't line up historically with many things about him, including his race. And so I think it's a really fascinating take, and I earlier today I was having some fun kind of A-Bing the original versions of some of these Hank Williams tunes, and Ray's take on it. But I think that you can't talk about the record without talking about what was going on in American history at that time. We're still 2 years pre-Civil Rights Act.
Yeah, absolutely.
So America is a tinderbox of discord with regards to race issues. And here we have, this phenomenal blind piano player picking up and this boy raised in Georgia who was raised around country music for sure, picking up and re-recording these things and then winning a Grammy with it is just no small feat.
No, I've always been drawn to Ray's voice. Georgia on My Mind hooked me the first time I ever heard it, and I've always loved country music. And to know, like you said, to all of a sudden discover that this record exists and this is Ray going out there and making, turning country standards, songs written by country songwriters, and giving them this unbelievable sort of, they basically exist in two places at once. They're country, and when you listen to them, they sound country, but at the same time they sound soulful and outside of country too. They do that, and it's hard to imagine anyone's able to really blend genres like that even today, where they don't just sound like, we kind of have a muddy middle nowadays, where like everything sort of blends into sort of the pop world, and like, so there's genres, blending that happens. Country artists try to go pop, and this thing goes here, but like for something to be so respectful of the actual style of music that it's doing, but still be able to reach audiences that don't naturally listen to that is incredible. And you can hear it in the record, which is amazing. I also, I agree with you too. I think his ability to hear the human element in those songs and to present that and show the world that like country music is for all people. And, it's not just for one group of people. Everybody hears, anybody with a soul hears this music and can hear the hurt and the heartache. And then an unbelievable voice that can just basically emote anything you need. You know what I mean? Like, you just listen to those songs and you cry, and your heart breaks, and you have joy and fun. Like, all of that just comes out because he was so good.
Well, and I think a lot of it, country music has put up walls of sorts, stylistically. And I think that, I grew up appreciating country music, not fully loving it, and grad school in a course taught by a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
He was going on and on and on about the strength of the genre, and how it sits really as a truly, the most pure form of songwriting, tends to service country. And this is a statement he made 20 years ago. And I agree some with it and disagree some with it. I would go further to say Americana is firmly in there, but from the craft of the song, there's not Eddie Arnold, Hank Williams. There's not many better songwriters that have ever written a song. Now, their delivery of the song could be off-putting if you're not used to the twang, and if you don't like that Nashville sound.
That's not your thing.
And so I think that the fact that I would have loved to hear the discussion when they said, all right, so here's what we're going to need you to do. We're going to need you to do a string arrangement, also with a big band, for this music that that you've heard, and you've only heard it as Hank and a guitar, and backing musicians. And I can imagine the eyes that rolled, when that was proposed. But my God, what a fascinating time to do that, and what an interesting project. Anyway.
Well, and I think it's a testament to Ray, and that, I mean, we kind of know some of this because, they made the movie about Ray with Jamie Foxx, and just, he's gotten more and more sort of attention in history, especially in the early 2000s. Right after he passed, he got a lot of attention. So we know more about him than maybe we would have known. I knew like 30 years ago for sure. But the guy was truly like a once in a lifetime talent. Like, the guy could do anything. The guy had like perfect pitch and timing, and like understood rhythm to like, so like, I think what was cool was, I think these musicians, whether they thought it was going to be the right kind of thing to add to country music or what they were going to do with it, as soon as you hear Ray and he gets a band together and they start putting this stuff together, you're like, oh, I hear it. Because Ray makes you hear it, right? I mean, that's just how I totally could see that happening. He's like, as soon as you're in a room with that guy, it would start to make sense,
Yep, absolutely. No, I agree completely. I mean, this, if anything, this just is a testament to the talent that
mm-hmm. Absolutely. Some of the critics at the time, things that came out, people have called the concept of it wonderful. I Can't Stop Loving You actually earned him a Grammy, as we had talked about prior to the video, for Best Rhythm and Blues Recording. That was in 1963. The album was actually nominated for Album of the Year, but didn't win. And then the Recording Academy has actually indicated that it is a significant album, an album of historical significance. And then let's see, Robert Hilburn of the Los Angeles Times wrote that the masterful interpretation of several country standards opened a lot of pop ears to country music and showed Nashville much about the proper use of orchestration, which is what you were mentioning with the string arrangements, which is pretty amazing. And the album in 1999 was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, as well as I Can't Stop Loving You in 2001. So some amazing, that kind of brings us to the sort of tracks on the record, which I'd love to talk about. One of my favorite things about records is just because it's a tactile, it really is something that you have to take it out. You got to get it out of the case. You got to put it on that player, and you got to listen to it from beginning to end. I mean, you don't have to, but you basically listen to each side from beginning to end. Is that it really helps break up the record in a way that you can sort of take and think about, and I think back then, and a lot of artists, when they were making records, they would think about that, like side A and side B, and how people experienced those two sides and what was going on there. And I think in particular, this record has some distinction on each side, which I think is a cool thing. So my question to you is, side A or side B?
That's like asking me to pick my favorite kid.
Right. Yeah.
The thing I like about vinyl in particular, just to piggyback what you just said, is it's almost like an opera in 2 acts.
Yeah.
You do have the ability to you have an intermission in the middle, and it really, we have an exposition in this with Bye Bye Love, which comes out of the gate swinging with up tempo, really, really, really kind of exciting first track. And, and then we experience some emotion in the middle, with I Love You So Much It Hurts, etc. And then we end it with Hey Good Looking on the last track of the second side. And so I can't pick a favorite. I think, if I'm going to go with the really trite items that I really enjoy in this record, I love the string arrangement on I Love You So Much It Hurts. That's not one of the, in my opinion, more mainstream popular country songs that are on this. For me, Bye Bye Love and Hey Good Looking are absolutely the evergreens here. He starts strong, he ends strong. And I really, really, I love the last song of an album. I think you have there, you really have in for even modern music, for Sea Changer, for your band, I feel like you can really tell a lot by a project, especially if it's a full length project, by the strength of the last song. And I think, it's a concept that was kind of foreign to me. And, on the AIMP Awards years ago, I remember when I believe Casey Musgraves was honored, and Shane McAnally, moreover, was honored, because of the strength of Rainbow. And I just remember people talking about that song and the strength of that song. And one of the comments that really stuck out to me, and I never had thought about music in this way, but somebody who had stood up that had been involved with that song really dove into the strength of the last song of the record thing. And I'm feverishly looking right now to double check and make sure Rainbow is in fact the last song of that Casey Musgraves record. But I do, after they said that, I kind of found myself going back and looking at music through a little bit of a different lens, especially when it's a physical product. And looking for that the exclamation point on the project, which and I just double checked, and Rainbow is the last song. I haven't listened to Golden Hour in a little bit. So, no. but and this ain't about Casey, it's about Ray. But for me, setting it up, with Bye Bye Love, and then getting emotional in the middle, and then coming out at the end with really a celebration of, musical style, in Hey Good Looking, which is, an indelible hit that everyone knows. It doesn't matter if you don't like country music, and if you've never heard the Ray Charles version. If somebody says, sings the Hey Good Looking, everybody knows it. It's part of the zeitgeist. It's part of the culture.
Yeah. I mean, that's country. I mean, if you just ask a random person on the street, like, at least maybe not quite now, because there's a lot that's happened since then, but especially back then, if he said, "Hey, sing me a country song," they probably would have said, "Hey, good looking." And that's like you said, that's a testament that he was going to throw that on there, and make sure that was on that first. Like you said, there's 2 volumes now. I don't know if they knew there was going to be 2 volumes when he first made the first one, but
well, I would argue the second volume, this one,
yeah,
is not as the track order is not as well done. I would say I really don't like the side 2, the way it ends. It's not that perfect statement like the
a little
first
more afterthought.
It is. The songs of the second volume I actually like quite a bit more, because they're songs, the Your Cheating Heart, You Are My Sunshine, and some of these things that are special to me. But from and that's why volume 2 didn't win the Grammy, frankly. It was a follow-up, and as many follow-ups happen, it wasn't as strong as the original. But yeah, I definitely, I love the way it starts, and I love the way it ends, and in the middle is got all the emotion, which is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the one the first song I ever heard, which made me aware that this record existed, was "You Don't Know Me." His recording of "You Don't Know Me," and then I went and checked out the record, and like you said, it kicks off with "Bye Bye Love," which, to be fair, like if you listen to that song, like talk about taking like a broken-hearted song, like a really sad song, and completely flipping it upside down in terms of the feeling and the spirit that's in it. Like, it is a celebratory tune, and everything about that song is not celebratory. It's like,
but that's what he did in this.
I know.
In so many cases, he would take, if it was up tempo, he'd go down tempo. If it was down tempo, he'd go up tempo a bit, which is really the principle that I think all musicians should take with covers. You should never do a cover that sounds like what you're covering.
No, you should want to give it a different angle, for sure. And yeah, and then, like you said, you go from that to "You Don't Know Me." Have As Much is a wonderful track. "I Love You So Much It Hurts," like you said, is absolutely gorgeous. That string arrangement is awesome. And the other 2 tracks are really strong too. I think "Born to Lose" is a really great ending to side A. We flip it over, and it's significantly more chilled out at the beginning of side 2, as it carries through. And then, like you said, it ends with "Hey, Good Looking," which is sort of sealing the deal on the record. I think if I had to pick, if I looked at it as 2 EPs and I had to choose one as only one I could take, I probably would take side A. But again, on a classic record like this, historic record like this, that they're both amazing. They're both good for their own reasons. And it's probably just because "Bye Bye Love" and "You Don't Know Me" mean so much to me. Those 2 songs, I love them so much that's probably why. And everything's subjective.
Well, everything's subjective. The only thing that's not subjective is the artistry of this record. And I'm sorry, if you disagree with me, I will give you reasons why you're wrong.
Yeah. I don't, but yeah.
No, I'm talking about not you, the proverbial you, the listener out there. This record is just an exquisite record. This is one of my favorites to pull out when I have friends over, and we're kind of
hanging out,
needle,
yeah,
and listening to vinyl. Oftentimes I'll have friends that'll come over and they'll bring a record or 2, and we'll kind of sit around and pour a nice drink and listen. And I've become a bit of a hobbyist audiophile, so I like to turn it up loud and enjoy the music. And when we do that, this is one I like to pull out because it surprises the hell out of people. Most people have never heard of it. Some of the more musical circles we run in, our buddies know of it, but the reality is, like, it was this, when I found it, it was a treasure. It was a treasure. It was an undiscovered treasure for me. And just proof of how much of a treasure it was, it was just reissued by Concord.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. And I called a buddy of mine that works there, and I said, this is the smartest thing you guys have done in a long time. And they do a lot of smart things. It's a fantastic label. But to reissue this now, when it wasn't I don't believe the original had been digitized, and for them to remaster it and roll it out digitally as a 1 and 2 collection and make it available to the masses, I think, it's not only a smart business decision, but it's also a good humanitarian decision. The world needs this music.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost bought the reissue vinyl with 1 and 2 combined, and I may still buy it. We'll see. I happened to, before I bought it, somehow I ran across this copy at my local shop, Phonolux, amazing, and
In good shape.
unbelievable shape. So of course I bought it immediately, and I know it's not volume 2. It's just, it's just the first volume, but like, I'm actually glad I own what the world first received was just this one. And so I'm glad I have a version that's just this one, because that's kind of important to me. I think it's really cool. And then, I can always buy that other one as well. Or if that volume 2 that you have is pretty cool. The actual.
I highly recommend. I'd get on Discogs or eBay and go find it. It's one of those that's worth seeking out, I think.
Yeah.
It actually, like I said, of the 2 volumes is my favorite, and probably sees more time on my turntable than volume 1. But it's a collection that, for me, it carries a huge amount of sentimental value, as well as artistic value.
Awesome. Yeah. So, switching gears to the next thing. So we kind of talked about side A and side B. So if you had to do one from A and one from B, what are the 2 songs that you?
All right. I still think I Love You So Much It Hurts is probably my favorite off side A.
Got it. Yeah.
I just can't get away from Hey Good Looking, because it's the perfect song to end a record with. And it leaves you wanting more.
Absolutely. It totally does. Yeah, because you're just like, oh, there's no more of this. And which makes complete sense why they did a volume 2, because the world was like, we need more of this.
Well, and in volume 2, arguably the B-side winds you down and kind of solidifies the entire thing. I don't know that there was much more ground to be covered by Ray at that moment in time. I would be curious. It would be a really interesting, I'm sure somebody somewhere has done a study on this, but to see what effect this record had on country music production for the decades afterwards, into the 70s, into the early 80s. I would argue that this probably had a lot to do with kind of the larger instrumental productions that we saw coming out through the late 60s. And
I wouldn't doubt that at all. I mean, think about like Glenn Campbell. Like, all those songs have so much orchestration on them. Almost sometimes, I love Glenn Campbell and I love those songs, but sometimes I listen to them, I'm like, maybe they could have dialed that down a little bit, some of that orchestration. And, but would that have happened that way if he had made this record? You know what I mean? Because all of a sudden they realized this sold. This was a hot item. It sold, and it really.
Even items like even items like Roy Orbison. If you listen to the Orbison stuff that was coming out 2 years after this, that was I think quite a bit more stylized than the country music of the 1950s.
Yeah,
and I have to believe this had some weight on that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if I had to pick my one from A, one from B, I can't get away from on A, You Don't Know Me. That song, I just love listening to that song. It just takes me somewhere, and I don't want to leave that place sometimes. And then on side B, honestly, I think my favorite track on side B is Ray's Careless Love. The fact that he was able to, I doubt that they would have ever told him no, but that he put a song he wrote on there, and it's a country song, I think is very important that he did that. And I love that track. So yeah, but yeah, you're right. Like, Hey Good Looking on side B. I mean, what are you going to do? You can't not like that tune. And yeah, the other ones are really good as well, for sure.
Yeah, this is one of those. There's a lot of records that are needle drop records for me, where I like a couple of the tracks.
Yeah,
this is a whole package.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
absolutely.
And I like, this is one that I often listen to this when I'm cooking, or like when we're doing dinner, And it's great background music, but when I do that, I'm listening to it for the whole of the record. And my kids have an assignment to catch the needle before it hits the paper, to flip it while my hands are dirty in the kitchen.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Way to get your kids involved in it, which is really cool. Maybe might do that one day if we ever have kids, because my buddy, Sean, Sean's son is just musical whiz. It's amazing to watch. He's 3 and he loves records, and they have a little record thing that he uses, and he's a kid, so he beats them all to hell, but he'll throw them up there. He can't even see it, right? It's above him, and he'll throw the record on there. He puts it without looking. He knows where the button is. He puts the thing down and turns it on and just listens to records. And you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing.
Just to think about the next generation of kids knows records and they know digital, but they don't understand tapes or CDs at all.
No, that's going to be like 8 tracks for me. Well, for me, I don't know about you, but I think I saw that for a glimpse, like the 8-track was a thing for a very small part of my life. But yeah, so would you say then your ultimate track on this is Hey Good Looking, or is it the one on the side A, the one with Hurts? I love you so much it hurts.
I'm gonna stick with Hey Good Looking, just because that for me is the one that had I not gotten both of these records on the same day, that for me is the one that would have made me go look for the next version.
Yeah.
No, I'll stick with that answer.
Yeah. And I got to stick with You Don't Know Me. I mean, that track caught my attention, maybe realized the album existed, like we talked about, and wanted to listen to it further. On the back of the LP, it talks about Marty Page's soaring strings as it puts on, within that actual track, and then all the other tracks as well. The big thing for me is that, like, when you hear Ray's voice, it's one of a kind, and it's amazing how that the country tracks that he are singing, just, it's like he always should have sang them, which is, that's the way he was. He had this ability to sing anything, and he always thought, well, he was born to sing that, because he was born to sing anything, Mm-hmm. And that track in particular just always, got me. So what is the personal impact that this record's had on you?
Well, this record, personally, I have to look at it through the lens of the 1960s, America and what was going on here. So that bears a lot of impact on me. But these records actually were part of a set of records that I received that had belonged to my grandfather.
Mm.
And my grandfather passed when I was 12, and he and I were very, very close and very similar, I think, in demeanor and
sure.
And in interests. And I am the grandchild that had taken the most interest in recorded music. And so I subsequently have had boxes upon boxes of old records and things given to me, including a box full of 8 tracks that had belonged to him. And this was just buried in a box with a bunch of Eddie Arnold, a bunch of other stuff that was, he was a listener. He would have been at his prime record collecting time, by about the 1950s, 1960s. And so he was pretty voracious in his music consumption. And so what surprised me was that in a box where I didn't have a lot of R&B, there was not a bunch of soul and things like that, that he had bought Ray Charles records was a surprise to me, because so much of the other stuff he did was that, like, super highly stylized, for lack of better words, white music of the time. Yeah. And so the impact there is that this, I think, and I don't know, and I never had the conversation with him, and I never would have been able to, because I didn't get these records until many years after he was gone. Mm-hmm. But to think that maybe this record served in some way to help him better understand and accept people of racial differences. I have to assume that it was partially there. And like, and don't read into this that my grandfather was some awful human. He was just a middle-class postal worker in Houston, Texas.
Well, you just live in a different time.
In a different time. And so I love the forward nature of this record for that purpose, but especially because it ties. Every time I listen to it, I feel like this is one of the ones that's on repeat of the ones that I got from him, and I feel like he's kind of hanging out, looking down, listening with me.
Yeah, he probably is. He's wondering. He wishes he could have a little bit of that drink you got.
He did like to have a good time.
Very good. Yeah, man. Personally for me, it's the first time I ever heard Ray sing "Georgia on My Mind," I was blown away, and I was like, that voice is just incredible. But I country music is important to me. I grew up with a truck driving father who at times was a farmer, at times in Arkansas. I spent my summers in Arkansas with my dad. My parents were divorced, and he had me driving tractors when I was 9, and sometimes he would throw me up in that John Deere and send me off through the fields, like just doing the work, driving this thing while he ran off to get something else, right? And every radio station in that tractor was country radio, so I was getting fed country music like constantly.
Country and Western.
Yeah, exactly.
Both times.
All at the same time. And, so I love that. And so when I had this, and then like any other person who loves music, right? So, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I like everything else too. So rock, and I love rap for, there was a period of time where that's all I listened to. Like I listened to a lot of different things, so the first time I heard "Georgia on My Mind" and I got introduced to Ray, like I was like, okay, well, this is an amazing voice and this is the kind of music he does. And then when I discovered that song, and then I found out that this record existed with all songs like that and him interpreting them, well, immediately I went to find it because I was like, oh, I gotta hear this, I gotta experience it. And it kind of changed my whole perspective of like the power of country music. Like that country music could take the heart of a guy like Ray and be so important to him that he would want to do that, in spite of, like you said, all the things that are happening at that time that might make him think, well, I don't want to give that music any time of day because, maybe the people who make that music haven't been good to me, and I think that is just an amazing thing. And, I don't always think about that when I'm listening to it. Most of the time when I think about it, I'm just thinking about how amazing he sounds and how great the songs sound, and that they just make me feel like I'm somewhere else, and that's the beauty of music. I mean, that's why I think it's so great. But that's the personal impact for me. And like you said, it's a kind of record you definitely would throw on at a party when people were there, and people would be kind of just like, oh yeah, like this is so good. It's always so good. Every decade, it's still so good. Like it doesn't change. Timeless, and that's an amazing thing. So what are your final thoughts about the record, about the vinyl? We talked a lot about the vinyl itself, but just in general about this really amazing record that we've been able to share and talk about.
We've covered a lot of ground here. You sent me a list of 130, 40 records, and
yeah,
skimming the list, I said, that's the one we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I highly recommend grabbing a copy of Volume 2. I think that they live nicely together. And in all honesty, you can listen seamlessly across Volume 1 and Volume 2, and it takes you on a journey. And
yeah,
you get to the end, and you're really at the end at that point. I think it's groundbreaking, and I think there's probably not been enough research done on it, because I too was Googling and looking for details, and I would love to read a dissertation on this. I'm surprised I didn't find one easily. There probably is one out there, on its cultural impact long term. This is the definition of an evergreen. This is something that our kids are probably still going to have an appreciation for, and
yeah,
that's the magic in music. I think I think we're at a time and place when there's more music coming at us, more new music being produced than ever in the history of man. And
it's daunting.
it's hard to break through. It's really hard to get, as well as anybody, it is hard to break through the crust and to be heard. And he was producing music at a different time when gatekeepers were everything, and we've removed most of the gatekeepers now. And so it's hard. I try to stand records up against the classics that I know and love, and on the quality standpoint and everything else. And I'm hopeful we're going to have some that are as indelible as this one was, but it really is. I think it's, whether you like country music, whether you like Ray Charles, it doesn't matter. It's great songs, and great performances, great orchestration. The big band is incredible.
So good.
Him, and it's a good listen top to bottom.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, basically for me, when I listen to it, I just feel blessed I live in a world that it exists. It reminds me why music means so much to me. It reminds me of the power that it has over me, in the sense that it can really just change my mood in an instant. It can make me feel comfortable and comforted, which is an amazing thing music can do. And yeah, I just feel grateful. I feel grateful that I feel grateful that I own this. But even so, that I'm also grateful that it's amazing that we live in a time where I can own this and enjoy this at home, like a vinyl record, and experience vinyl the way that a vinyl does for you, what it does. But then I can also jump in my car and play the same record in my car through, Spotify or whatever platform I'm using at the time, and I still have access to it. Like if we had conversations with your grandfather about what we have available to us, he would be flipping his lid. You know what I mean? Like,
you're absolutely right.
I mean, that's right. That's the coolest thing about our time, is that we can actually experience this record like your grandfather did, but then we can also experience the same music the way only we and our kids will. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think that, speaking to the technology and everything we have now, listening to vinyl is intentional. It used to be the only means, and now it's the means you choose. And it has to be intentional, which makes the experience more special innately. For me, it's, I'm on all the music services, and, it kind of interchangeably. Amazon lately, because I've got their HD.
I use Amazon a ton.
I'm trying that through my new DAC, but I really primarily listen digitally until it's time for me to really listen. And that's when you sit down after a long day and you just need to unwind, and you turn it up a little bit past where it's too loud. And do you
listen? I'll throw this in here because I think this is a lot of audiophiles and people talk about this, but do you try to listen at least sometimes with the headphones? Because that's supposedly the perfect way to listen. Or does it matter to you?
I've never bought into that. I spent a small fortune on my speakers. So to sit in front of my speakers with cans on is not that great of an experience for me. I know there are some that swear by tube headphone preamps and things like that, and it's just, for me, it's never been the way. So headphones for when I'm traveling.
I think the beauty of it is, I kind of agree with you. I think it's fun, like in a record store, to throw the headphones on, to check out a record, make sure it works, because you kind of get a little bit of that, and you're like, oh wow, this sounds amazing, and you're super excited to bring it home. But when you're at home, you want to be able to sit on a couch or a chair, like you said, with a drink or something, throw your feet up and just close your eyes and listen to the music. And you can't really do that really great with headphones on, because you're kind of you're even more stuck to that one spot. You know what I mean? Unless you got, I guess, portable, wireless ones. But
if you have wireless, then there's sound degradation in the wireless piece there.
Yeah.
Like, it becomes diminishing returns.
Yep.
The true purist analog audiophiles will want the analog signal to come in uninterrupted.
Exactly. So Yeah.
So you'd be forced to have a cord anyways, but
just listen to it with really expensive speakers. Awesome, man. Well, Randell, I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today on my inaugural or debut Waxing on Wax conversation. This is going to go up on our website, and it's going to be available exclusively through a new service that I'm launching called the I-40 Club off of my website. Again, thank you, Randell, for being here. I appreciate you joining me for this conversation, Waxing on Wax, as we talked about Ray Charles's modern sounds and country and Western music. And yeah, everybody, we're going to keep doing this. We got more of these planned. So get out there, get both volumes. Look at that. They're perfect. They're amazing. Take care of each other, and we'll see you in the next one. Later.